Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alyssa, and about 2 months ago I started an online vintage store. It's called End of June Vintage. I've officially made over 100 sales, and this is how much money I've made. Not to brag, but it's pretty exciting. I'm going to take you through exactly how I did it, step by step in semi-chronological order, because when I first started, there weren't a ton of resources on how to do it, so I just wanted to share my experience. I have a ton to say, so just bear with me, and there will be timestamps in the description so you can keep track of where we are and come back to certain sections if you need to. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning with the idea. So my number one recommendation, if you take anything away from this video, is to have a niche. I know people hate hearing that, and you might be thinking, I don't want to have a niche, I love all vintage clothes, but it seriously is so important. This is a little bit silly, but my niche is Harry Styles inspired clothing. It's really specific, but it is my biggest advantage because when I'm sourcing new items, I know exactly what I'm looking for, and I also know exactly who my target audience is in terms of marketing. So it really works out in my favor, but your niche doesn't have to be as specific as mine. It could be clothing from the 1970s, or maybe you want to go for a certain aesthetic, so like pastel colors, anything you want, but it is really important before you do anything else to clarify your niche. Secondly, I want to talk about branding. So if you're here watching this video on youtube.com, you probably know a thing or two about the internet and how important it is to have a strong brand. For me, like I said, my niche is Harry Styles, so it was easy because I copied my aesthetic and branding based on Harry Styles' own brand. But you can do that with whatever your niche is. So let's say your niche is the 70s, you could do 70s inspired fonts, or if you're pastels, obviously pastel colors. But it's important to have your brand imaging match the vibe of the clothes that you're selling, so people know what they're getting into and you attract the customers who will eventually buy your product. So once you're set and you have your idea, the next step is to choose where you want your vintage store to live. So in other words, your platform. You could do anything from selling directly on Instagram and having people Venmo you to having your own fully hosted website, which is what I have. And obviously there are a ton of options in the middle, such as Etsy and Depop and other reselling sites like that. The nice thing about Etsy and Depop is that they're essentially search engines, so you don't really have to do a lot of your own marketing. People can just type in vintage purple blazer, and if you're selling a purple blazer, they're gonna find your shop and probably buy your product. I think this is a super great option for businesses who don't have a super specific niche, or you just want some of the marketing work taken care of for you. If your main passion is going out and finding the clothes and, you know, sourcing the most high-end beautiful vintage items you can, go for it and maybe sell on Etsy. But if you're like me, I was really into the idea of building my own brand and having my own platform and website, and so that is why I went with my own website, is because I just liked having full control over what everything looked like and exactly how I could sell my products. If you do want to build your own website, the two main options are Squarespace and Shopify. You honestly can't go wrong with either one. They're pretty similar pricing wise. I chose Shopify and I paid $29 a month for Shopify Basic. I believe Squarespace is $26 a month, and then I also purchased my own domain, which was like $10 to $15 for the full year. The reason I chose Shopify is just because it kind of aligned better with my business and the type of website I wanted to create, but like I said, you can't go wrong. Okay, let's talk legalities. My business is not a corporation or an LLC or anything like that. It is a sole proprietorship, which basically means I didn't have to do very much to make it official, and all of the money goes through my own personal bank account. I do this year want to incorporate, but it's definitely not a necessary step if you want to start your own online vintage store. And in fact, I would probably recommend starting as a sole proprietorship like I did and just getting your feet off of the ground before you establish yourself as an official business. However, what I failed to realize is that I did need to register to collect sales tax. A lot of the rules and regulations vary state by state, and obviously if you're outside of the US, it's an entirely different system, but make sure you do your research and apply to collect sales tax if you need to. And for me, it was not difficult at all. I just Googled apply to collect sales tax Michigan or whatever, and I did it. It was easy, but it did take a few weeks to process, so I would recommend doing that before you do anything else so that you're ready to go once you get your website up and running. I did not do that, and then I had to pay late fees that were very minimal, but it was still annoying. So do your research legally, make sure you got it all figured out before you start selling. Okay, now that we got all of that out of the way, we can talk about the fun stuff, which is actually sourcing and selling your items. If you are thinking about starting an online vintage store, you're probably already very familiar with the vintage and thrifting world, but just to go over your options, sorry, I'm reading because there's a lot. Basically, your options are buying products online from other sellers, from vintage stores, from thrift stores, from estate sales, and from wholesale or vintage dealers. So I would recommend staying away from the first two, online and vintage stores, because those clothes are already marked up and it's going to be really hard for you to make a profit if you're marking them up again. It's just like not how the market works. However, I do find it very helpful to browse often just to familiarize yourself with the brands and pricing and all of that. Most vintage stores get their products through wholesale vintage dealers, which it's kind of hard to break into that world. You kind of have to know someone to get in contact with a vintage dealer, and that's something I'm still trying to work on. I haven't really cracked the code yet, but you could always Google, you know, wholesale vintage dealers in your area and see if you could find something. Obviously, vintage stores aren't going to share where they get all their products because they don't want to spill their secrets. That's okay. You can start with thrift stores and estate sales. So my method is just frequenting every single Salvation Army in my area. I go all the time. And then also for estate sales, I always find them on estatesales.net, and you can even sign up for emails so you can be alerted when new sales are coming up in your area, which is super helpful. And you can look at pictures and see if they have clothing or the type of clothing that you're looking for. And yeah, definitely recommend estate sales. I am gonna do another video of how I find and clean and list all of my products. So if you're interested in going into more detail on that, make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss that video coming soon. All right, so once you have your clothes, obviously you have to list them. And I cannot stress enough how vitally important it is to have good photos. Even if you haven't realized it, you have definitely been influenced in the past to buy something just because the photos make it look good. So photos are so important. Definitely get creative with your photos and try to style your pieces in a way that your target audience would appreciate. You don't necessarily need to have a plain backdrop, but I think it just looks really clean and good. I kind of made my own backdrop just from a very large piece of fabric that I bought from my local fabric store. Also, you don't necessarily need to model your products. I like modeling them just because I think it's helpful to see how they look on an actual person, but you could always throw it on a dress form if you have one of those, or you could just take photos of the clothes on the hanger. However you choose to do photos though, the most important thing is lighting. So the best light is natural light. So if you have a window or something that has good natural light, like this window I'm sitting in front of right now, that would be a good place to take photos. I actually take my photos in my basement, so I'm not using natural lighting at all, but I just have a setup that I know kind of works. Your number one goal should be accurately representing what the clothes look like. So I also edit my photos after I take them in Lightroom. I just kind of touch up the lighting and the colors and everything, but definitely don't over edit your photos because, like I said, you want to accurately represent what they look like. If you over edit, they're gonna look like they're a different color than they are in real life, which is just a bad situation. Another thing that isn't necessarily required, but I would definitely recommend, is measuring your clothing. So this is important because vintage sizes aren't always accurate and they don't always match up to modern sizes. So if you want to, you could just estimate and put in your description, this would best fit a size large, but you want to be obviously as accurate as possible. That will really help out your customers. So I just looked up how to measure vintage clothing, and I include the measurements in the description of every single one of my items. Okay, pricing can be kind of tricky. When I first started, I had absolutely no idea how to price items. I Googled how to price vintage clothing, and I found this amazing resource from a website called Sammy D Vintage. It's basically a pricing formula, so I'm not gonna take you through the entire thing, but I will link it down below. But essentially, they price things based off of original cost, repair cost and time, cleaning cost and time, gas mileage, time to travel, time to shoot, edit, and list, and then that value is impacted by the condition, trend value, demand, and designer name. So what I ended up doing is tweaking this formula to fit my own business model and my own own needs. And then I created my own formula and put it into an Excel spreadsheet. So I'll show an example, but essentially what I do is every time I want to price an item, I just plug in the original cost and a few other values and it'll spit out the price that I should price it as. Obviously, I do make adjustments sometimes, like if I just sold a suit for $80 and I have a really similar one, I know it'll probably sell for at least $80, so I'll round up and down as I see fit. But I love this formula because it keeps it consistent and kind of takes out the guesswork of it, and you're good to go. I want to touch on marketing because it's been super important to the success of my store. So like I said, if your shop is going to be on Etsy or Depop or something similar like that, it does take some of the work out of marketing, but I would still 1000% recommend having your own social media pages. There are lots of different methods for reaching people on social media, but I just want to share what worked for me. So for me, that was TikTok. I used a pretty popular audio on TikTok to share some of my clothes before the shop even launched, and it kind of blew up. It got over 30,000 views, and that was how I found my first few hundred customers. I had my Instagram and my website linked on my TikTok profile, obviously, and I had literally like 600 people sign up for my email list just for making this one video. That was really fun too because it created some hype around the shop before it even launched, and I got so many followers, and it just really grew the community of my eventual customers. Secondly, I actually use influencer marketing, which I feel like is pretty unique for the vintage world, but it worked so well for me. And I think the reason it worked so well is because I partnered with an influencer who literally had the exact audience that I wanted to attract. So I sell Harry Styles inspired clothing and she makes Harry Styles inspired fashion videos. So we did a giveaway together on the day that my shop launched, and I gained at least 1,000 followers from that partnership. So again, I'm not saying either of those are necessary, but I just wanted to share what works for me, and you can get creative with your own social media marketing, but I would definitely encourage you to do your own research and find some creative ways to reach your audience using social media. I'm very active on social media, mostly Instagram, and I interact with my followers and customers a lot, and I'm always posting discount codes and sales, which drives so much traffic to my website. It is my #1 marketing tool. Okay, so what happens when you actually sell stuff? Obviously, you have to package and ship it, and you might be thinking, okay, this person made a purchase, the hard part is over, but that is false. I actually think packaging and shipping is the most time-consuming parts of running my own online vintage store, but it's also the most important part, and I invest a lot of time into it for a reason. First of all, I didn't know where else to fit this in the video, but obviously you have to clean your clothes before you ship them. A lot of the clothes I buy are supposedly dry clean only, but I use a product called Woolite that I just buy on Amazon, and it essentially lets you dry clean items at home and it makes them smell amazing, which is really important. I always wrap my items in tissue paper just to make it look cute. I buy it at the dollar store, and then I always write a personal note. I cannot stress enough how important this is. There's a phrase in business that 80% of your sales come from 20% of your customers. Essentially what that means is you want to keep them coming back. You want to make your customers happy so that they're more inclined to purchase from you again. The best way, in my opinion, to do this is make a personal connection with them. So like I said, I write a note to every single one of my customers. If it's a repeat customer, I say thank you so much for another order. I really try to get to know them, kind of. So I just write a little thing that says, hi, thank you so much for your order. It means the world to me. Thank you for supporting End of June Vintage. I love these items so much. I hope you love them as much as I do. I'm so glad they're going to a good home. And then I also always include a discount code for 15% off their next purchase. Also, this is optional, but I made custom stickers, which was really fun for me, so I always include stickers in there too. For actually shipping my items, I go through USPS because most of the clothes are lightweight enough that it's cheaper than UPS, but do your own research on this because the pricing will vary based on where you live and your products and the weights of everything. 99% of the time I ship in poly mailers, which I buy online, but I also use boxes, obviously, which pro tip, you can get boxes for free from USPS. I have my customers pay for shipping. Shopify automatically calculates the shipping cost as they're checking out, but free shipping is a really good way to make sure people actually check out once they reach their cart. So if you want to do free shipping, it is very effective, but like I said, my customers pay for shipping and it's all calculated for me, so it's really easy. I just have to purchase and print out the shipping label, attach it to the package, and then I drop it off at the post office. And then my job is done, except just kidding, it's not, because I obsessively track every single item to make sure it arrives on time, because that's just the kind of caring business business owner that I am. I just talked for so long, but I think that is all I have to say for this video. If you got anything valuable out of this, and I sincerely hope you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. I'll definitely be posting a lot of behind the scenes of running my business. Also, you can obviously check out my vintage store at endofjunevintage.com, and if any of you guys have small businesses or vintage stores, definitely drop it in the comments. I would absolutely love to support you. And if you have any questions, clearly I love talking about this, so don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to talk with you guys, and I would love to help you on your journey of starting an online vintage store. Love you.